Well, good morning, Americans. How are you? Don't you know me? I'm your native son. It's the Boston Cowboy here, casting on my razor life from a beautiful New England. And today we have a very, very curious headline about a Mr. Ratcliffe, the CIA director, just took a trip over to Moscow, took a trip over there to Russia, unannounced. Landed yesterday, Tuesday. Today being Wednesday, August the 26th. And Mr. John Ratcliffe, head of the CIA, has gone over to Russia, landed a plane in Moscow, and spent some time there. So now let's think about this. What would the head of the CIA of the United States want to go over there to Russia for right now, of all time? Well, let's listen to this here little newscast, and I believe that there is his plane that they got an image of. Um, as I say, unannounced, off the record, no itinerary. Let's listen to what they have to say.
This US military plane in Moscow. These pictures started a ton of speculation and turned out to be America's spy chief flying into the Russian capital. He's the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe. But what was he doing there? It's still unclear really why he went to meet top Russian officials. These are the theories. It could be linked to President Trump's attempts to broker an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, but that effort has been stalled for months now. Or about Russia-US prisoner exchanges, which Ratcliffe has been involved in the past. But the Americans hardly made a secret of this. A giant military plane that could be seen on flight trackers coming in from Latvia, which is a member of NATO. So another theory is this could have been a warning from the US to President Putin not to mess with the NATO military alliance. So far, there's been no official word from the CIA or anyone in this building, the US State Department.
Okay. So let's think of this logically. We have the head of the CIA visiting Russia, unannounced. But they send this big old plane that basically is the American flag flying over there in Russia, over Moscow, saying, hey, look, there's a big old American plane landing right here. So, number one, they didn't want to announce it here in the States or in Russia. And they didn't really take the steps to disguise the fact that he was going. So they wanted this particular news story to make it out this cycle and let everybody know that there's some type of meetings going on. We're not going to let you know what those meetings are. Speculation or no speculation. This is the CIA people. They're not gonna show us their hands, so to speak. Who they met, who knows? Maybe we'll find out. But even if they announce it, I doubt that was basically the public appearance, the public meeting. Rest assured that there was a bunch of other meetings behind the scenes. I don't even know how long he was there for. But let's read something here from the nationalreview.com. German Chancellor. Well, let me put it on the screen here for you. Here we go. Where we go. So, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has pledged that the people or groups behind this and other hybrid attacks on German soil will pay for them. But Andrew asks how. The logic of the gray zone attack is that there is no return address, no chain of custody that links the attacker to the site, to the state sponsor. This starts up here. Andrew Studiford has been devoted chronicler of the gray zone. Provocations that cannot be directly pinned on America's adversaries, but sure do have a conspicuous tendency to advance their interests. His latest dispatch on the subject follows the discovery of an explosive drone discovered at Leipzig Airport in Germany earlier this month. And this here article was written on August 25th, which was yesterday, okay? So this was yesterday's article. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has pledged that the people or groups behind this and other hybrid attacks on German soil will pay for them. But Andrews asked how. The logic of the gray zone attack is that there is no return address, no chain of custody that links the attacker to the state sponsor. That's what makes CIA Director John Ratcliffe's surprise visit to Moscow so inauspicious. The White House took unusual steps to conceal the director's itinerary before he departed for Moscow on a U.S. Air Force C-17 out of Riga, Latvia. No one in the administration is commenting on the trip for the record. On background, sources will only confirm that the trip is real. Publicly available flight tracking data does not show the C-40B on the next flight to Moscow. The Washington Post reported, the aircraft is a modified business jet used to transport senior government officials. The details are sparse, but the backdrop against which this rare in-person meeting is happening is portentous. Again, this is a very rare in-person meeting. And it is so necessary that the CIA director had to go to Moscow. I imagine at the behest of a Mr. Donnie T. Okay? Donnie T probably dialed him up and said, listen, you're due there in Moscow. And John's like, whoa. Come again? Moscow, Texas? No. We're talking about Moscow, Russia. You mean Moscow, Russia? Yes. Now get your butt on that plane and get on over there. Well, what am I supposed to tell the press? Don't worry about no press. They don't need to know nothing. Donnie T says, just get your butt over there. So that's what happened. Right? This is very rare. This is a rare in-person meeting. Ratcliffe's trip comes as Ukraine's long-range strikes on Russian infrastructure have precipitated an energy crisis in Russia. Moscow's worsening manpower shortages have made Western analysts fear that the Kremlin will attempt to escalate its way out of the crisis that Vladimir Putin imposed on his people. That sounds very, very familiar here. Very damn familiar. Let's read that again. Moscow's worsening manpower shortages have made Western analysts fear that the Kremlin will attempt to escalate its way out of a crisis that Vladimir Putin imposed on his people. So let's just forget about those words, Russia, Moscow, and Vladimir Putin, right? Let's forget about that. So there's a crisis going on in a particular country that has made analysts fear that the government in charge of that country will attempt to escalate its way out of the crisis that the government of that country has imposed on its own people. So in order to figure out a way to get out of this crisis, a self-imposed crisis, so to speak. That particular government has come up with a plan to escalate. Escalate what? Escalate attacks to get out of the self-imposed crisis that government is creating. So that sounds very familiar. Reading on, earlier this month, the Wall Street Journal revealed that U.S. intelligence suggests that Russia will test the NATO's resolve to challenge Moscow's ambition with a provocation that risks all-out conflict. So U.S. intelligence is believing that Russia in the near future is going to test NATO's resolve with some type of provocation that risks all-out conflict between Russia and NATO. Okay. U.S. and European leaders increasingly see signs of Russia conducting probing attacks to test NATO's resolve, including Russian cruise missiles that have landed in Poland and drones flown into Romania, the report read. The possible threats range from a cyber attack on a NATO country or sending unmarked armed groups to occupy territory to a limited incursion on the alliance's eastern flank. Okay. The gray zone provocations in parts of Europe that Moscow regards as sensitive are likely part of the multivalent Russian threat. U.S. intelligence is reportedly convinced that the Kremlin was behind the event in Leipzig, which started this here article. Germany, Leipzig, Germany, where they found a drone with explosives. It is highly likely, according to Latvian intelligence, that Russian military intelligence was behind the explosives smuggled into Europe in the summer of 2024. Security officials in Lithuania said last year the four parcels were part of a test run for a Russian plot to trigger explosives on cargo flights to the United States. These operations raise the risk of miscalculation to unacceptable levels. Perhaps Moscow wants to confront the West with a why die for Danzig moment. Interesting. Danzig. I was just listening to good old Glenn. Yeah. Twist a cane. The Kremlin asks us to consider, would the West really maintain its support for Ukraine if the world were in the balance? Interesting. Well, how do we know the Kremlin is asking us that? How do we know this? I mean, they have had 4 years now to really ramp up this here attack, right? But they haven't. It seems to me that the Kremlin has been really slow stepping and being very, very careful about escalation. Yet, we are reading a report here from the National Review that says just the opposite. So they want us to believe that Russia and Putin and Moscow and the Kremlin wish to escalate. They've had 4 years. Why would they wait 4 years just to escalate now? Right? Is this like a precursor? And good old Johnny Ratcliffe is going over there to Moscow to say, hey, you guys better step this thing up here. You know, time's a ticking for y'all. You know, we want to see this here thing escalate and get wrapped up pretty quick. So the Kremlin asks us to consider, would the West really maintain its support for Ukraine if the world were in the balance? So who is the Kremlin asking that? Or is another country, 3-letter agencies and whatnot asking Well, if Ukraine was really on the balance, and on the other side of the balance was, the rest of the world, what would we still support Ukraine in behest at the ruin of the rest of the world? Would we still support Ukraine? Is that what the Kremlin is asking, or is that what the National Review is asking? Interesting. And if Moscow succeeded in sponsoring attacks that killed NATO civilians on or over NATO soil, there's no guarantee that an escalating series of reprisals and retaliations would not take on a logic all its own and spiral out of control. Now that sentence, let's pick this sentence apart. Let's forget about what it's actually about and just listen to the logic and, and, and the fallacy of this sentence here. Okay. And if, okay, and if, so that's a statement saying, well, it's not 100%. It's like, maybe a 50-50. If Moscow succeeded in sponsoring attacks that killed NATO civilians on or over NATO soil. So if Moscow, okay, Moscow being Russia, Russia being the Kremlin being Putin, I guess, right? So if there was some type of attack that killed NATO civilians on or over NATO soil, and if we could pin that on Moscow, okay, there is no guarantee that an escalating series of reprisals and retaliations from these here NATO nations, okay, would not take on a logic all its own and spiral out of control. So this is Moscow. If Moscow succeeded in sponsoring, not attacking themselves, but in sponsoring attacks, right? So how would they figure that out? How would they figure out, well, Moscow sponsored this right here attack? Well, how do you know? Well, I heard the guy speaking Russian. I think he was speaking Russian, and he was a white dude, and it looked like a Russian dude. So Moscow must have sponsored their attack, and which killed NATO civilians on or over NATO soil. So does that mean that they're killing another NATO civilian over NATO soil? Like over as in the location over NATO soil? Or I get on, right? They're physically on that their particular piece of soil, okay? But over, does that mean like over where? Over like physically, geographically in the air, in a plane, over their particular NATO soil? Or does that mean like they have been attacked because we're disputing this here NATO soil? Like I'm attacking you over the fact that you are, a piece of shit, right? So, just because you're a piece of shit, I'm going to attack you. I'm attacking you over the fact that you're a piece of shit. So is that what this is saying? Like NATO civilians are being attacked over the fact that Russia and Moscow want some NATO soil? And how much soil, particularly? How much soil are they talking about? Are they just talking about soil or any other type of resource? Like what about wheat or soy or petroleum or water, right? How about water? if they were over NATO water and not over NATO soil, or on NATO water and not on NATO. So this is very confusing right there, right? I'll highlight that. And then it says if, right? So if Moscow succeeded in sponsoring attack, well, how do they sponsor attack, right? Do they sponsor the attack by just saying, hey, we want someone to go attack them? Or do they got to pay for the attack? Do they pay for the person's travel? Do they pay for the person's weaponry? Did they train the person? Like, how exactly is sponsoring coming into the picture here? And that's we're still only on if, right? Like, if this was a possibility, okay? Then it goes on to say, there is no guarantee, right? There is no guarantee that an escalating series of reprisals and retaliations, there is no guarantee if Moscow succeeded in sponsoring some type of attack, there is no guarantee, right, that any escalating series of reprisals, okay? What's an escalating series of reprisals? Like what the Germans here set up here? Is this a reprisal? Where they found this here drone discovered at Leipzig airport. Is this a reprisal that Friedrich Merz has pledged that the people or groups behind this and other hybrid attacks on German soil will pay for them? Is that the type of reprisal he's talking about? That type of reprisal will be escalated, and there's no guarantee that that set of escalating reprisals would not take on a logic all its own. How is an escalating series of reprisals going to not take on a logic all its own? That's what this is saying, that there is no guarantee, right, that an escalating series of reprisals, so there's an escalating series of reprisals that is occurring, and these reprisals would not take on a logic all its own. How does this work? How does an escalating series of reprisals and retaliations not take on a logic all its own, right? Because it can't. A series of reprisals, which are escalating in the nature of those reprisals, or de-escalating, either way, would not take on a logic all its own, right? How is it going to take on? So they're basically separating this reprisal and retaliation from the people that are reprising and retaliating and saying, well, hey, this here is reprisal and retaliation, regardless that they are being perpetrated by human beings. Well, it's going to take on its own logic, right? And it's about to spiral out of control. That's what it's saying, that, hey, this series of reprisals. So it's basically a nonsensical sentence is what I'm saying. This whole article is what I'm saying is nonsense. It seems like it makes sense because the words next to each other, when you read them through, you're like, okay, yeah, I kind of get the gist. But once you really break it down, and this goes for about, I would say 95% of all news articles written on either side of either issue, any issue, pick an issue, read the article, and you will find the vagueness and illogical assumptions and fallacies right? There's so many logical fallacies just in this one statement alone. It should negate this whole article, basically. And it does in my mind. After I read this, I'm like, well, this whole article is negated, right? And maybe that's their point. Like, read this, and it's basically saying, well, hey, like, if Moscow, right, were to sponsor an attack, and we don't know how we're going to figure that one out ever, right? But if they did, there's no way and there's no guarantee that a series of reprisals is going to separate itself from the human beings that are perpetrating it, take on a logic of its own, right? There's no guarantee that it would not take on a logic, right? So there's no guarantee. We're not guaranteeing that this here reprisal is basically gonna, become an entity unto itself and take on a life all of its own and drop its own bombs, right? Like, we can't guarantee that. There's no guarantee that we're not responsible for that one there, boys. That's the point. And they're trying to, and they don't know. They don't have anybody in Moscow that's corroborating any of this. They're just making up this whole thing to tug on people's emotions. Like, oh no, oh no. I mean, look at what they started the article with. Like, we found these explosives here in this here airport. So, and then it ends. Whatever Director Ratcliffe's mission in Moscow is, this is certainly more than a get to know you confab. Now they got to end on a little bit of comedy. I got to give him that right there. Whatever he's there for, right? Whatever his mission is, rest assured is not a vacation. This ain't no PTO in Moscow. Okay, this is an actual CIA government mission that Ratcliffe, the director now of the CIA, is on. Right? It's certainly more than a little, hey, we just want to come over and shake hands with y'all and introduce myself. It's a little more than that, right? It's a little more than a get to know you confab. No shit. You don't say. Like, gee, thanks for telling us that one, We couldn't figure out the director of the United States CIA just took a flight to Russia because Putin wants him in Russia for whatever reason, right? It's not the other way around. Well, you guys come here. We're not going there, right? Like, we're too busy. No, it's like, CIA director, clear your damn schedule. Get on a goddamn flight right now. Get your ass over to Moscow because we got to figure out some shit. What are they figuring out? Well, let's try and walk this through logically. Why would the CIA director be over there? And who would he be talking to? They're probably trying to figure out, like, well, yeah, we got this war. Who gives a shit? Like, it's a moneymaker on both sides. And your country and your civilians are feeling the pressure in Russia. And yeah, we're feeling the pressure in the United States on this other thing. But we need to come to some type of deal. And I've been saying this, like, if you watch my previous video, and I say it makes perfect sense to me anyway. If the United States and Russia were to, come to some type of agreement and say, hey, look, the United States got this here hemisphere on lock. We'll help you there, get your head, because you're the one with all the oil in the Middle East, but mainly you, Russia, Putin, Moscow, and your infrastructure is aging out, so let's destroy that, over the next 5 years, like completely destroy it. And yeah, your people will suffer a bit, but we'll help you out. You know, we'll make our people suffer. We'll collect some tariffs and we'll send them over to you to keep yourself going there. And then once this is all over, we'll come in and rebuild their oil infrastructure at the cost of these here taxpayers and all those tariffs we collected. Yeah, we're going to rebuild that oil infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And then you guys can run that there Western Hemisphere. We'll run the Eastern Hemisphere. Mr. Ratcliffe, you go back, tell your boss that everything's on schedule. It seems like we're enemies, but we're really partners. Why don't they just come out and say it? Like, what a big, what a big production they got to put on. Just come out and say, look, Trump, Donnie T, and Putin are buddies, right? They're card playing, drinking buddies, whatever. And they come up with this here plan. And basically, it could be a good plan in the long run that the United States and Russia are going to align themselves, right? And basically, it's going to be the United States more aligning itself with Russia than Russia aligning itself with the United States. See, the government is going to be aligning its style to the Russian type of a government, but the economy is going to be more like the American economy, where it's a more open type of an economy. And you know, we got our fingers on the lever of the financial market. So when we want a recession, we'll just push that recession button. And yeah, that's how it works, you know. And we want you to take over and implement this type of financial system in the Russian economy after we help you build out your oil infrastructure that was destroyed. But then we're going to take on and come under the Russian type of government system, meaning there's going to be a well, you know what that means basically. It means basically, yeah, the status quo is the status quo, is what it means right now. I mean, look at Putin's been in power now for, I don't know, 20, 25 years maybe. I got to look that one up, but something about that. I think that's what we're looking at. You know, the Republican side of the whole deal is a done deal, right? That party is done. It's basically the you know, the Donnie T party and everything that entails. So they just need somebody on the Democratic side now that'll basically play ball with Donnie T and his people. I don't know what they're waiting for. Like they just keep going at it. Maybe because both sides are getting so much donations, they're like, hey, let's keep getting while the getting's good, so to speak. But eventually, you can see it happening that you know, the Democrat is going to be probably taking over at some point, or just swept under the rug, made inconsequential to the status quo and the real decisions that are going on in this here country. So I think those are going to be coming out of another country. So I mean, who knows? Why would the director Ratcliffe clear his schedule, fly to Moscow to have a meeting? Oh, he didn't meet with Putin. You sure about that? Well, it's not on the itinerary. Okay, yeah, we're gonna believe that one, right? And if it wasn't Ratcliffe, then and Putin, it was Ratcliffe and the head of maybe the FSB or who knows what. But there's something cooking, people. There's something cooking, no doubt about it. Uh, this isn't no get to know you confab, as the National Review so elegantly put it. So that's what I think. I think, and I think the Dems need to wake up to this fact. Like, look, uh, it's this here country is pretty much done deal, taken over at this point. It is what it is, right? And I gotta tip my hat. Donnie T did this in front of everybody's face. Everybody saw this one coming, and he just waltzed right in and basically said, "I'm taking this here bitch over, like it or not, and there ain't nothing you're gonna do about it." So, that takes some type of genius to do that, and I do believe that for sure, for sure. Uh, Come on, he took over the most successful financial, economic, educational, military people. People. Call him stupid, call him ignorant, call him a womanizer, whatever you want to call him. But you all know deep inside, like, this here man had this board game going on that he set it up such that nobody would step to him, nobody try and accuse him. And if they did, it was probably like a set-up type of thing. Like, yeah, you come and accuse me of this, and we'll pretend I go to this here court case, and then I can sue this person and that person. It's like, it makes you wonder, like, how much is really, like, real, right? And how much is really just like all just staged, you know? And every day it seems like more and more of it's just a big old stage, and everything's just like already been planned out, and there's a director behind the scenes like yelling cut. Cut, everybody back to your places, let's reshoot. I don't know, it's a funny time we're in, right? Funny time. And as long as you're watching, they got an ad up there to sell whatever they're gonna sell, right? And who knows, people. We just got to keep our heads on a swivel, and keep an eye on this one for sure, because something's gonna come out of it. And I'll leave y'all with that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Have a good one, Boston Cowboy. Adios.